Emily Carter, 28, stood silently as she watched her family's empire crumble beneath the weight of their own betrayal. 3 years after the day she found her sister and fiancé together, her revenge plan had finally come to fruition. As her father's company stock plummeted on live television, her phone lit up with desperate messages from the people who once abandoned her. Emily smiled. Justice had never tasted so sweet. Before I dive deeper into this family betrayal story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, and if this kind of family drama already has you hooked, hit that like button and subscribe for more unbelievable true stories of revenge and redemption. Now, let's rewind to where it all began. Emily Carter had always been the responsible daughter. Growing up in a wealthy Boston suburb, she'd followed every rule her ambitious parents had set. Unlike her younger sister Olivia, who partied through college and changed majors 3 times, Emily had graduated with honors from Northwestern with a business degree, just as her father had wanted. By 28, she was the rising star at her father's investment firm, Carter Financial Solutions, being groomed to take over the family business one day. Emily had met Ryan Thompson at a charity gala 2 years ago. He was charming, successful, and came from a good family, everything her parents approved of in a future son-in-law. When he proposed with a 3-carat diamond ring during a family vacation in the Hamptons, everyone had been ecstatic. The wedding was set for spring, just 6 months away, and Emily had thrown herself into planning the perfect ceremony. That fateful day had started like any other. It was their engagement party weekend, and guests would be arriving that evening for a lavish celebration at her parents' estate. Emily had spent the morning with her mother and the event coordinator, finalizing details for the party. Her father was working from his home office, and Olivia, her 25-year-old sister and maid of honor, was supposedly helping Ryan with some surprise for the event. "Emily, darling, I think we should go with the white roses for the centerpieces instead of the pink ones," her mother, Catherine, said, examining the sample arrangements. "They'll photograph better." "I preferred the pink, Mom, but whatever you think is best," Emily replied, trying to hide her annoyance. This had been the pattern throughout the planning process, her mother taking control, her preferences being overlooked. After finalizing the floral arrangements, Emily realized she hadn't seen Ryan in hours. He had texted earlier saying he was working with Olivia on something special for the party, but hadn't responded to her last 2 messages. Feeling a slight knot of worry in her stomach, Olivia had been acting strange for weeks. Emily decided to check Ryan's guest house, where he was staying until the party. As she approached the guest house, she heard muffled laughter. The curtains were drawn, but the window was cracked open. Emily froze when she recognized her sister's voice. "She's so boring, Ryan. I don't know what you ever saw in her," Olivia's voice drifted through the window. "Business arrangement, babe. You know that. Your dad made it pretty clear that marrying Emily was my ticket to a partnership," Ryan replied. "But you're the one I want." Emily's heart hammered in her chest as she pushed open the unlocked door. The sight that greeted her would be forever burned into her memory: Ryan and Olivia entangled on the bed, her sister wearing nothing but the emerald necklace that Ryan had given Emily for Christmas. The room fell silent. Olivia's expression shifted from shock to something resembling smug satisfaction, while Ryan scrambled to cover himself. "Emily, I can explain," he started, but Emily was already backing away, her engagement ring suddenly feeling like it was burning her finger. "How long?" Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. Olivia sat up, making no attempt to cover herself. 6 months. Since the week after he proposed, actually. She had the audacity to smile. "Come on, Em. You had to know he wasn't really in love with you. Dad practically threw you at him." Emily turned and ran back to the main house, tears blurring her vision. She burst into her father's office, where he was on a conference call. "Emily, what on earth," he began, but she cut him off. "Ryan and Olivia. They've been sleeping together for months. I just caught them, she said, her voice breaking. To her shock, her father's expression didn't change to one of outrage or concern. Instead, he calmly ended his call, removed his glasses, and sighed deeply. "Sit down, Emily," he said in the same tone he used for business meetings. Emily remained standing, disbelief washing over her. "Did you hear what I said? My fiancé and my sister." "I heard you," Richard Carter interrupted. "And I'm telling you to calm down and think rationally. The party is tonight. We have investors and board members flying in specifically to celebrate your engagement. You can't possibly expect me to go through with it," Emily said, her voice rising. Her father's expression hardened. "What I expect is for you to be a Carter. And Carters don't air their dirty laundry in public. We'll deal with Ryan and Olivia privately, but tonight, you will put on your dress and your ring, and you will smile." Emily stared at her father in horror. "Are you seriously asking me to pretend nothing happened? To stand beside the man who's been cheating on me with my own sister?" "I'm not asking," Richard said firmly. "The merger with Thompson Industries depends on this marriage. Millions of dollars and dozens of jobs are at stake. Your personal feelings are secondary." Before Emily could respond, her mother walked in, followed by Olivia and Ryan. Olivia had the decency to look slightly ashamed now, but Ryan wore the confident expression of someone who knew he held all the cards. "Emily, be reasonable," her mother began, her tone placating. "These things happen in marriages of our social standing. Discretion is what matters." "Discretion?" Emily repeated, incredulous. "They weren't exactly discreet, Mom. They made a mistake," Catherine said. "But creating a scandal benefits no one. Ryan has agreed to be more careful in the future." Emily looked from her mother to her father to Olivia, who now had the audacity to place a comforting hand on her arm. "We can work through this, Em," Olivia said softly. "Just do what Dad says. The party will be beautiful." That was the moment something broke inside Emily Carter. The perfect, obedient daughter vanished, replaced by a woman who suddenly saw her family with complete clarity for the first time. They didn't care about her happiness or her heartbreak. She was just a pawn in their games of power and money. "You're all insane," she whispered, yanking off her engagement ring and throwing it at Ryan's feet. "The wedding is off. The engagement is off. And as far as I'm concerned, this family is off too." As she turned to walk out, her father's voice stopped her cold. "If you walk out that door, Emily, you're cut off. No trust fund, no position at the company, no support. Think very carefully about what you're doing." Emily met his gaze without flinching. "I'd rather have nothing than be part of this family for another minute." She walked out, her father's threat ringing in her ears, with no idea where she would go or what she would do, but certain of one thing: the perfect life she thought she had was nothing but an elaborate lie. The first few weeks after Emily left her family's estate were a blur of cheap motels and sleepless nights. She had walked out with only her purse, laptop, and the clothes on her back. Her father, true to his word, had immediately frozen all her accounts and credit cards. The small emergency fund she kept separate was enough for a used car and a couple of months' rent on a studio apartment in a less than desirable part of Boston. The engagement party had gone ahead without her. According to social media posts and gossip from former friends, her parents had explained her absence as a nervous breakdown due to wedding stress. Photos showed Olivia stepping effortlessly into her place, hanging on Ryan's arm, wearing a dress from Emily's own closet. The betrayal cut deeper than Emily had thought possible. "We are concerned about your sister's mental health," her mother told reporters from Boston Lifestyle magazine, which had been scheduled to cover the engagement. "We are giving her space to heal, but of course, the wedding plans continue. Family always comes first for the Carters." The hypocrisy was staggering. Emily had tried contacting a few family friends for support, only to discover that her father had gotten to them first. Doors that had once been open to her were suddenly closed. Even her college roommate, now a successful attorney, had declined her lunch invitation with a vague excuse about being swamped with work. 2 months after leaving, Emily sat in her sparse apartment, scrolling through job rejection emails. Despite her impressive resume, no financial firm in Boston would touch her. Her father's influence ran too deep. "We are actually on a hiring freeze right now," one interviewer had said nervously, not meeting her eyes. "But best of luck, Ms. Carter." She had walked out of that interview to find a text message from an unknown number. It was a photo of Ryan and Olivia kissing at what appeared to be an intimate dinner, with her mother and father smiling approvingly in the background. The caption read, "Family dinner. We miss you, Em. Come home and stop this nonsense." Oh? Emily had thrown her phone against the wall so hard the screen shattered. That night, she drank an entire bottle of cheap wine alone, sobbing until her throat was raw. Rock bottom came 3 months after her escape. Down to her last few $100s, Emily had been forced to take a job as a barista at a coffee shop near her apartment. The irony wasn't lost on her. She had an MBA from Northwestern and had once managed portfolios worth millions, yet here she was making minimum wage plus tips. It was during a particularly busy morning shift that she looked up to see Olivia and 2 of her socialite friends standing at the counter, designer sunglasses perched on their heads, expressions of calculated surprise on their faces. "Emily. Oh my God, it's true," Olivia exclaimed loudly enough for the entire cafe to hear. "Someone told me you were working here, but I couldn't believe it." She turned to her friends. "My sister, the former Carter financial executive, now serving lattes. Isn't it just tragic?" Emily's hands trembled as she gripped the counter. "What can I get you, Olivia?" Olivia made a show of examining the menu. What would you recommend for someone who's recently engaged?" "Oh, didn't you hear? Ryan proposed to me last week. Properly this time, not just a hammer-down situation." She flashed a diamond ring that was at least a carat larger than the one Emily had worn. The cafe had gone quiet, customers and co-workers alike watching the drama unfold. Emily felt lightheaded with humiliation and rage. "Dad gave us his blessing, of course," Olivia continued. "He says Ryan and I make much more sense together. Business-wise and otherwise." She leaned forward conspiratorially. "Between us, I think he's relieved. You were never really cut out for the Carter lifestyle, were you?" Emily's manager, a kind woman named Janet, who had witnessed the entire exchange, stepped forward. "I need to ask you to leave," she told Olivia firmly. "We reserve the right to refuse service." Olivia's perfectly manicured eyebrows rose. "Seriously? Do you know who our family is?" "I don't care if you're the Queen of England," Janet replied. "You don't come into my cafe and harass my employees." After Olivia and her friends had flounced out, Janet had found Emily in the back room, trying desperately to hold back tears. "Take the rest of the day off," she said gently. "And Emily, for what it's worth, I think you're better off without people like that in your life, family or not." That night, lying on her lumpy futon, Emily hit her emotional rock bottom. She had lost everything: her family, her career, her fiancé, her home, her social standing. The unfairness of it all was crushing. She had always done everything right, followed every rule, been the perfect daughter, and this was how the universe had repaid her. For a dark moment, she contemplated giving up. Calling her father, apologizing, accepting whatever humiliating conditions he would set for her return. The thought of crawling back made her physically ill, but what choice did she have? As she stared at the ceiling, something shifted inside her. The crushing weight of despair began to transform into something harder, colder, more focused. She thought of her father's smug confidence that she would fail without him. Of Olivia's casual cruelty. Of Ryan's calculated betrayal. Of her mother's cold pragmatism. Emily sat up, wiped her tears, and opened her laptop. If she was going to rebuild her life, she needed a plan. And if her family thought she would just fade away into obscurity while they carried on with their perfect lives, they were sorely mistaken. "They think I'm broken," she whispered to herself as she began to type. "But they have no idea what I'm capable of." As the first light of dawn filtered through her cheap curtains, Emily had the beginnings of not just a survival plan, but a blueprint for justice. The Carters had taught her well business was business, and sentimentality had no place in it. It was time to put those lessons to use against the very people who had instilled them. 1 week after her confrontation with Olivia at the coffee shop, Emily was working a closing shift when a man in an expensive suit entered just before closing time. Something about him seemed vaguely familiar, but Emily couldn't place him until he spoke. "Miss Carter." "Emily Carter," he asked, approaching the counter. Emily tensed, immediately suspicious. "Who's asking?" "Victor Zhao," he said, extending his hand. "We've never formally met, but I recognized you from company photos. I was a senior investment analyst at Carter Financial until last month." Now Emily remembered where she'd seen him. He had been one of her father's most promising hires, often mentioned in company meetings for his innovative investment strategies. She asked, noticing his use of past tense. Victor's expression darkened. "Your father fired me. Claimed I was leaking information to competitors, which was completely false. But that's not why I'm here." He glanced around the empty cafe. "Do you have a few minutes to talk?" "It's important." After locking up the shop, Emily led Victor to a nearby diner. Over coffee, he explained that Richard Carter had been engaging in increasingly questionable business practices over the past few months. "After you left, things changed at the firm," Victor explained, sliding a flash drive across the table. "Your father pushed through the merger with Thompson Industries, but the numbers never added up. I started digging and found evidence of inflated valuations, hidden debts, even what looks like outright fraud." Emily stared at the flash drive. "Why are you bringing this to me?" "Because when I raised concerns, I was fired and threatened with legal action if I spoke out. Your father made sure I couldn't get hired anywhere else in the industry." Victor's eyes met hers. "Sound familiar?" Emily nodded slowly, understanding the parallels in their situations. "But what do you expect me to do with this? I'm not exactly in a position of power anymore." "That's where you're wrong," Victor said, leaning forward. "You're Carter. You know the business inside and out. And most importantly, you have something your father doesn't." "What's that?" "Nothing left to lose," Victor replied. "Plus, you're still a 15% shareholder in the company." Emily blinked in surprise. "No, my father would have taken your shares when he cut you off." Victor finished. "He couldn't. They were part of your grandmother's trust, established when you were born. He has voting control while you're considered part of the family business, but ownership is still yours. He's been counting on you not knowing that." For the first time in months, Emily felt a spark of hope. If what Victor was saying was true, she might have leverage she never knew existed. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Victor met regularly, poring over the documents he had smuggled out of Carter Financial. The evidence was damning. Richard Carter, with Ryan Thompson's help, had been systematically cooking the books, using the merger to hide massive losses and personal misappropriation of funds. "Your father's been living beyond even his considerable means for years," Victor explained one evening as they worked in her small apartment. "The firm has been covering his losses, but with the economy tightening, they needed Thompson's assets to stay afloat. And let me guess Ryan knew this when he proposed to me," Emily said bitterly. Victor nodded. The original plan was for him to marry into the Carter family, secure his position, and then help manage the crisis. When you left, they just pivoted to Olivia. Emily paced the small space. So my sister is marrying a man who's using her to save my father's company, while my father is using both of them to cover up potential criminal activity. She laughed humorlessly. And they thought I was the family disappointment. As their investigation deepened, so did Emily's resolve. She had initially just wanted to expose her family's betrayal, but now she saw an opportunity for something more significant, a chance to take back what was rightfully hers and expose the corruption at the heart of Carter Financial. "We need more than just documents," Emily said one night, after they had worked late into the evening. "We need someone inside the company, someone who can verify our findings and potentially testify if this goes to court." Victor looked thoughtful. "I might know someone. Grace Liu, from accounting. She never liked how your father operated, and she's been there long enough to know where all the bodies are buried, so to speak." Emily nodded. "Approach her, carefully. And we'll need legal advice from someone not afraid of going up against my father." "I have a law school friend who specializes in whistleblower cases," Victor offered. "But Emily, you need to understand what we are talking about here. This isn't just about getting back at your family anymore. This could mean criminal charges, public disgrace." "Justice," Emily interrupted firmly. "This is about justice. For you, for me, and for everyone else my father has stepped on to maintain his empire of lies." As their plan began to take shape, Emily found herself growing stronger, more focused. The coffee shop job became just a cover, as she spent every free moment building her case against Carter Financial. She moved out of her studio apartment into a slightly better one, using money that Victor had helped her access from her grandmother's trust, small withdrawals that wouldn't alert her father. They established a secure communication system, created backups of all evidence, and gradually began contacting former employees who had been mistreated by Richard Carter. The network of disgruntled ex-Carter Financial staff proved larger than Emily had imagined. "Your father's made a lot of enemies," Victor remarked. "People are eager to help." 6 months after her life had imploded, Emily stood in her new apartment, looking at the wall covered with documents, photos, and connection charts, a visual representation of her father's house of cards. In that moment, she realized she had found something she never had at Carter Financial: purpose. This wasn't just revenge, it was reformation. "We are almost ready," she told Victor as he reviewed their timeline. "One more piece, and we can make our move." That final piece would come from an unexpected source, and would transform their plan from damaging to devastating. 8 months into Emily's exile from the Carter family, an opportunity presented itself that neither she nor Victor could have anticipated. Grace Liu, their inside contact at Carter Financial, called Emily in a state of barely contained excitement. "The company is hosting a charity gala next month," Grace explained over their secure line. "A big one, all the executives, major clients, and financial press will be there. It's partly to announce the official merger completion, and partly to rehabilitate the company's image. They are calling it Carter Thompson Financial's Future Forward Fund. It's all very self-congratulatory." Emily twirled a pen between her fingers, thinking. And they are short-staffed on the planning committee. The event company they hired is bringing in additional staff, and I might be able to get you in as one of them. No one from the executive team ever notices the event staff. You could have access to the building, maybe even some of the offices. The plan was risky but elegant. Emily would work with the catering staff, wearing a uniform, her hair dyed a different color, wearing glasses she didn't need. The disguise wasn't elaborate, but it didn't need to be. The Carters and their circle were the type of people who looked through service workers, not at them. For 3 weeks leading up to the event, Emily worked with the catering company, establishing her cover identity as Emma Collins, a graduate student working part-time. The night of the gala arrived, and Emily found herself standing in the service entrance of the building she had once expected to run someday. "You okay?" asked Victor through the nearly invisible earpiece they'd acquired for the operation. He was stationed in a van across the street, monitoring security and communications. "Fine," Emily murmured, adjusting her black server's vest. "Just strange being back here." The Carter Thompson financial headquarters had been redecorated for the occasion. The main floor had been transformed into an elegant reception area, with champagne flowing and Boston's elite mingling among displays highlighting the company's purported charitable works. Emily moved through the crowd with practiced invisibility, carrying a tray of hors d'oeuvres, her eyes cataloguing familiar faces. There was her father, holding court with several board members, looking confident and distinguished in his tuxedo. Her mother stood nearby, elegant as ever, laughing at something a socialite had said. And then Emily spotted them, Olivia and Ryan, her sister resplendent in a designer gown, her engagement ring catching the light, as she draped herself over Ryan's arm. For a moment, the sight of them threatened to overwhelm Emily with renewed anger. But she pushed the emotion down, focusing on the mission. "Second floor security is changing shifts in 5 minutes, Victor's voice came through her earpiece. "That's your window." Taking advantage of a momentary lull in service demands, Emily slipped away from the main event and made her way to the service elevator. Using the access card Grace had provided, she reached the executive floor where her father's office was located. "You have approximately 12 minutes before the next security sweep," Victor advised as Emily moved swiftly down the darkened corridor. She reached her father's office and used the key code Grace had obtained. Her father still used family birthdays for his passwords, a security weakness Emily had pointed out years ago, but he had never corrected. Inside, she went straight to his computer. "I'm in," she whispered, connecting the specialized USB drive Victor had prepared. It would create a mirror of her father's hard drive without leaving digital traces of the intrusion. While the download progressed, Emily quickly searched through the physical files in her father's desk. In the bottom drawer, hidden beneath some corporate reports, she found a folder labeled Thompson Integration Personal. Inside were documents that made her blood run cold: prenuptial agreements for Ryan and Olivia's upcoming wedding that included unusual clauses about corporate control, signed affidavits from board members backing Richard's leadership regardless of company performance, and most disturbingly, what appeared to be records of offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. "Download complete," Victor's voice came through. "You need to move, Emily. Security is heading up earlier than expected." Emily quickly photographed the physical documents, replaced everything exactly as she had found it, and was about to leave when she noticed a small safe behind her father's desk that hadn't been there before. Acting on instinct, she tried the same code as the office door and to her surprise, it opened. Inside was a single flash drive labeled Insurance. Without hesitation, Emily pocketed it and slipped out of the office, making her way back to the service elevator just as the security guard rounded the far corner of the hallway. She returned to the gala, heart pounding but outwardly calm, resuming her role as an invisible server. The rest of the evening passed in a surreal blur. Emily moved through the crowd, overhearing snippets of conversation about the company's bright future, about Ryan's leadership potential, about Olivia's transformation from party girl to corporate wife material. Near midnight, as the event was winding down, Emily found herself serving at a small table where her father sat with Ryan and 2 major investors. "This inquiry is nothing to worry about," Richard was saying quietly. "We have friends in the right places. By the time anything formal happens, the merger will be fully consolidated. And if it accelerates," one of the investors asked nervously. Ryan stepped in smoothly. "That's what the offshore contingencies are for. Worst case scenario, we've secured enough to ensure the key players are taken care of." "Speaking of securing things," Richard said, lowering his voice further, "I've moved up the wedding date. The sooner we formalize all connections, the better." Emily's hand trembled slightly as she placed fresh drinks on their table, but none of the men spared her a glance. She was nothing to them, just another faceless server, invisible and insignificant. That night, back at her apartment, Emily and Victor examined their findings. The insurance flash drive proved to be a goldmine. Richard Carter had been keeping detailed records of his illegal activities as leverage against potential betrayals by business partners. The drive contained evidence of tax evasion, deliberate misrepresentation to shareholders, and even blackmail. "This is incredible," Victor said, scrolling through the files. "With this, we could not only expose the fraud but potentially bring criminal charges. Your father might actually go to prison." Emily stared at the screen, a complex mix of emotions washing over her. "He deserves to," she said finally. "They all do. But we need to be strategic about this." "What are you thinking?" Emily's gaze hardened as she formulated the next phase of their plan. "The wedding. They've moved it up, which means they are getting nervous. That's when we'll make our move, when they are all together, celebrating their supposed triumph. A public takedown." Victor looked concerned. "That's risky, Emily." "It needs to be public," Emily insisted. "If we just turn evidence over to the authorities, my father will use his connections to bury it or minimize the damage. We need to make such a spectacle that no one can look away. No backroom deals, no quiet settlements." As they planned late into the night, Emily was surprised to realize that the burning hatred she had carried for months had transformed into something colder and more focused. This wasn't just about hurting her family anymore, it was about justice, about consequences, about restoring integrity to a company that had once stood for something before her father corrupted it. "You know, watching you tonight," Victor said as they finally wrapped up their session, "how you handled yourself back in that building, you remind me of why people used to respect the Carter name. Before your father lost his way." The comment caught Emily off guard. In all her planning for revenge, she hadn't considered what might come after. For the first time, she allowed herself to imagine not just tearing down her father's corrupt empire, but perhaps building something better from the ruins. I know you're all on the edge of your seats wondering what evidence Emily found on that flash drive. Before we continue to the next part where things really start to heat up, if you're enjoying this family revenge drama so far, please hit that like button to help more people discover this story. And if you've ever had to deal with betrayal from the people who should have had your back, drop a comment below. Are you Team Emily, or do you think revenge is never the answer? Now, let's get back to what happens next. 3 weeks before Ryan and Olivia's hastily rescheduled wedding, Emily's careful plans hit an unexpected complication. She arrived at her apartment one evening to find the door slightly ajar. Heart racing, she approached cautiously, listening for any sounds inside. Hearing nothing, she pushed the door open to find her living room in complete disarray. Drawers appended, furniture moved, even the air vents opened. Looking for this, came a familiar voice from the corner of the room. Emily spun around to see Grace Liu sitting calmly in a chair by the window, holding the insurance flash drive. "Grace? What are you doing here? What happened?" Emily asked, though a sinking feeling in her stomach told her she already knew the answer. Grace smiled without warmth. "You know, for someone so smart, you can be remarkably trusting, Emily. Did you really think your father wouldn't have loyal people watching for any sign of your return?" Emily's mind raced, trying to process this betrayal. "You've been working for my father all along." "Not initially," Grace admitted, standing up and smoothing her impeccable pantsuit. "I genuinely disliked how he ran the company. But when I realized what you and Victor were planning, I saw an opportunity. Your father rewards loyalty very generously. So the charity gala, getting me inside, that was all a setup?" Emily asked, trying to keep Grace talking while she assessed her options. "Where was Victor? Had he been compromised too?" "That part was actually your idea," I just facilitated it, Grace said. Though I must admit, watching you serve drinks to your father while plotting his downfall had a certain poetic quality. Emily took a careful step toward the kitchen, where she kept a phone hidden for emergencies. And Victor? Grace's smile widened. Currently having a very uncomfortable conversation with some associates of your father's. He should have been more careful about his financial history before going up against Richard Carter. A cold dread spread through Emily. What does that mean? It means Victor Zhao has his own secrets, Grace replied. Gambling debts, primarily. Your father has graciously offered to make them disappear in exchange for Victor's cooperation. And the return of all evidence, of course. Emily's mind whirled with this new information. Had Victor been using her all along? Or was he another victim of her father's manipulations? You won't get away with this, Emily said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. We've made copies, secured cloud storage. All accessed from devices in this apartment or Victor's, Grace interrupted smoothly. Devices that are now in our possession. The cloud accounts have been wiped. It's over, Emily. As if to underscore Grace's point, Emily's phone rang. She answered it cautiously. Emily. It was her father's voice, cold and controlled as always. I believe you have something that belongs to me. Hello to you too, Dad, Emily replied, struggling to keep her voice steady. Sending your minions to break into my apartment now. That's low, even for you. Don't be dramatic, Richard Carter said dismissively. Consider it a security audit. Now, let's discuss terms. You will turn over all evidence you've gathered, sign a comprehensive NDA, and agree to leave Boston permanently. In exchange, I'm prepared to be generous $2 million, and my word that Victor walks away unharmed. Emily gripped the phone tightly. And if I refuse? Then Victor faces charges for corporate espionage and theft of proprietary information. Given his previous financial indiscretions, he'll likely serve significant time. As for you. Her father paused. Well, let's just say that mental health commitments can be arranged quite discreetly these days, especially when a concerned family is involved. The threat hung in the air. Emily knew her father well enough to know it wasn't a bluff. I want to see Victor first, she insisted. Proof that he's okay. Reasonable, her father conceded. Grace will escort you. You have 1 hour to decide, Emily. Don't disappoint me again. The call ended, and Emily found herself being led by Grace to a waiting car. They drove to an upscale hotel where Victor was being held in a conference room, guarded by 2 men who looked more like enforcers than businessmen. Victor's face was bruised, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled. When he saw Emily, his expression crumpled with shame. I'm sorry, he said, his voice hoarse. They found out about Atlantic City. The debts, they were going to break my knees, Emily. Your father offered a way out. Emily felt sick. The one person she had trusted, the foundation of her entire plan for justice, had been compromised by his own past mistakes. When, she asked quietly. When did you make the deal with my father? Last week, Victor admitted, unable to meet her eyes. After we found the flash drive. He contacted me directly. Said he knew what we were doing, had known all along. Said he'd bury me if I didn't cooperate, but that he'd clear my debts if I did. Emily absorbed this, her mind already calculating, adapting. And the evidence? They have most of it. Not all. Victor looked at her significantly. Not everything was where they thought to look. Emily caught his meaning immediately. They had established several dead drops around the city as contingencies offline, physical backups of their most damning evidence. Grace, who had been watching this exchange closely, stepped forward. Your hour starts now, Emily. I'll return to escort you to your father for your decision. Left alone with Victor, Emily spoke in a whisper. The backup in the library book. Still there, as far as I know, Victor confirmed. But Emily, they are watching everything. How will you access it? Emily squeezed his hand. Let me worry about that. Just be ready. When Grace returned, Emily projected defeated resignation. Take me to my father. I know when I'm beaten. At Carter Financial's offices, Richard Carter waited in the conference room, flanked by Ryan and, surprisingly, Olivia. Emily's sister looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. Emily, her father greeted her coolly. I trust you've come to your senses. You win, Dad, Emily said, her voice flat. I'll sign whatever you want. Just leave Victor out of this. Richard pushed documents across the table. The NDA, a statement acknowledging your mental health issues, and an agreement to stay at least 500 miles from Boston for 5 years. As Emily skimmed the documents, Ryan smirked. Always knew you'd fold when things got tough, Emily. That's why your father chose me to run the company. Emily signed without comment, watching her father's triumphant expression. The money will be transferred tomorrow, Richard said. I expect you gone by the weekend. Emily stood to leave, then paused. One question, Olivia. Was it worth it? Betraying your own sister. For the first time, Olivia looked genuinely conflicted. It wasn't personal, Em. It was business. Funny, Emily replied softly. That's exactly what I told myself too. As Emily walked out, seemingly defeated, she was already formulating the next phase of her plan. Her father had won this battle, but the war was far from over. 3 months after Emily's apparent capitulation, she was living in a modest apartment in Chicago under the name Emily Winters. The $2 million from her father remained untouched in an offshore account, blood money she intended to use for a greater purpose. Emily had dyed her hair dark brown and adopted a low profile, working remotely as a financial consultant for small businesses under her new identity. To anyone watching, and she assumed her father still had people checking occasionally, she appeared to have accepted her exile. In reality, Emily had been meticulously executing the contingency plan she and Victor had created months earlier. Using burner phones and encrypted communication channels, they had maintained contact, rebuilding their case piece by piece. The library book Dead Drop had yielded a thumb drive with copies of the most incriminating evidence. Victor, released from his gambling debts as promised but still under Richard's thumb in Boston, had been carefully gathering new information from inside Carter Thompson Financial. The merger is officially complete, Victor reported during one of their secure calls. But there are problems they are desperately trying to hide. The SEC has opened a preliminary inquiry, though your father's connections are slowing it down. And the wedding? Emily asked, noting how rarely they discussed the personal aspects of her family's betrayal these days. The mission had become about justice, not just revenge. Next month. Small ceremony at the Four Seasons. They are keeping it low-key because of the SEC attention. Emily made a note. Perfect timing. How's our other project coming? Their other project was Alexandra Winters, the ghost investor Emily had created using a portion of her settlement money and some extremely careful identity management. Alexandra had been making small, but strategic investments in companies connected to Carter Thompson Financial, establishing credibility in the financial community without raising alarms. Alexandra received an invitation to the Carter Thompson Investors Summit next week, Victor confirmed. Your father doesn't personally vet the smaller investors anymore, that's Ryan's job now, and he's not as careful. And our friend at the SEC? Emily asked. Diana's ready whenever we are. She just needs the complete evidence package. Diana Chen was the final piece of their new plan, a senior SEC investigator who specialized in financial fraud cases. Emily had approached her through a carefully vetted intermediary, presenting an anonymous tip and portions of their evidence. Unlike Richard Carter's paid connections within the agency, Diana was known for her uncompromising integrity and had been building a case against Carter Thompson for months, waiting for enough evidence to move forward officially. The next step was delicate. Emily needed to appear in person at the Investors' Summit as Alexandra Winters, right under Ryan's nose. The disguise had to be perfect: dark brown hair styled differently, subtle facial prosthetics to alter her cheekbones, colored contacts, and most importantly, a completely different demeanor. Emily had spent weeks practicing Alexandra's walk, her slightly British-influenced accent, explained by a childhood in international schools, her mannerisms. Alexandra Winters was confident, but not flashy, knowledgeable, but deferential in the right moments, exactly the type of investor Ryan Thompson would underestimate, and Richard Carter wouldn't look at twice. The day of the summit arrived. Emily, now fully transformed into Alexandra, entered the Carter Thompson Conference Center with her heart hammering, but her exterior perfectly composed. She mingled effortlessly, making connections, slipping her carefully prepared business cards to key individuals. Ryan approached during the networking session, drawn to the new face among his regular investors. Alexandra Winters, Emily introduced herself in Alexandra's cultivated accent, extending a manicured hand. Wonderful event. Carter Thompson's growth strategy is quite impressive. Ryan preened under the compliment, completely failing to recognize the woman he had once been engaged to. Alexandra, lovely to meet you. I don't believe I'm familiar with your fund. We are relatively new to the Boston market, Emily replied smoothly. Primarily UK-based until recently. I must say, the merger integration appears to have been remarkably seamless. No signs of the typical post-merger inefficiencies. That's because we plan more thoroughly than most, Ryan said, puffing up with pride. In fact, I personally developed the integration strategy. How fascinating, Emily said, leaning in slightly. I'd love to hear more about that approach. It could be quite valuable for my other investment considerations. Ryan, always susceptible to flattery, launched into a detailed explanation of the merger process, inadvertently confirming several key elements of fraud that Emily and Victor had suspected, but couldn't prove. Emily recorded the entire conversation, with a discreet device in her purse. Later that evening, at the VIP reception following the summit, Emily finally came face-to-face with her father. Richard Carter was holding court with several board members when she approached the group. Mr. Carter, she said, extending her hand. Alexandra Winters. Your reputation precedes you. Richard shook her hand absently, his eyes not really focusing on her face exactly, as she had predicted. To him, she was just another investor, not worth his full attention. Enjoying the event, Ms. Winters? He asked perfunctorily. Immensely. In fact, I was just discussing the merger specifics with your soon-to-be son-in-law. Quite impressive how you've managed to consolidate operations so quickly. Richard nodded, already looking past her to more important guests. Yes, well, efficiency has always been a Carter financial hallmark. Indeed, Emily replied with a small smile. I particularly admire how you've handled the offshore structuring. Very creative. That caught Richard's attention. His eyes sharpened slightly as he looked at her more carefully. For a heart-stopping moment, Emily thought she'd gone too far, that he might recognize her. I'm not sure what you're referring to, he said coldly. Emily backtracked smoothly. Oh, merely the international expansion strategy outlined in your annual report. Perhaps I misunderstood the structure. Financial jargon can be so complex. Richard relaxed slightly, dismissing her as harmless, and soon excused himself to speak with more significant guests. Emily breathed an internal sigh of relief as she slipped away to the ladies' room, where she sent a coded text to Victor. Phase 1 complete. Father suspects nothing. Thompson gave us everything we needed. That night, back in her hotel room, Emily carefully compiled all the new evidence, adding it to their existing files. Tomorrow, she would meet with Diana Chen to hand over the complete package. Within weeks, the SEC would have everything they needed to launch a full investigation into Carter Thompson Financial. But Emily wasn't content to let the slow wheels of regulatory justice turn on their own. She had one more card to play, a public revelation timed for maximum impact. And she knew exactly when to play it. 2 weeks later, on a crisp autumn morning, Emily stood in the back of St. Patrick's Cathedral in downtown Boston, watching guests arrive for Ryan and Olivia's wedding. She wore a simple black dress and oversized sunglasses, no elaborate disguise today. She wanted to be recognized when the time came. The cathedral filled with Boston's elite business leaders, politicians, socialites, all there to witness the union of two powerful families. Emily spotted her mother near the front, fussing over flower arrangements, her father greeting important guests with practiced charm. Her phone vibrated with a text from Victor, SEC team in position. Financial news outlets standing by. Are you sure about this? Emily typed back, absolutely. See you inside. As the ceremony began, Emily slipped into a seat near the back. The wedding was lavish, with white roses everywhere and a string quartet playing softly. Olivia looked radiant in her designer gown as she processed down the aisle on their father's arm. The priest began the ceremony, and Emily waited patiently through the readings and homily. Finally, the moment came. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. Emily stood. I have something to say. A collective gasp rippled through the congregation as heads turned to see who had spoken. Richard Carter's face darkened with fury as he recognized his elder daughter. Emily, don't you dare, he began, but Emily was already walking toward the front of the church. I'm not here to object to this marriage, Emily said clearly, her voice carrying through the cathedral. My sister and my ex-fiancé deserve each other, truly. Confused murmurs spread through the guests as Emily reached the altar steps. I'm here because at this exact moment, SEC agents are entering Carter Thompson Financial offices with a search warrant. Emily held up her phone, showing the breaking news headline that had just appeared. And I thought my family should hear it from me first. Chaos erupted. Richard lunged toward Emily, but was restrained by the priest and best man. Olivia stood frozen in shock, her perfect day disintegrating around her. Ryan was already on his phone, his face ashen. This is preposterous. Richard shouted. Whatever evidence you think you have is fabricated. You're jealous and mentally unstable. Richard Carter. A firm voice cut through the tumult as Diana Chen strode down the aisle, flanked by 2 federal agents. I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of securities fraud, wire fraud, and tax evasion. The cathedral erupted in frantic whispers as photographers, who had been posing as wedding guests, began snapping pictures. Financial reporters who had been tipped off slipped in through the side doors, capturing the spectacular downfall of one of Boston's most prominent business leaders. As the agents led her father away in handcuffs, Emily finally locked eyes with her sister. Olivia's expression shifted from shock to understanding to a resignation that contained a hint of respect. You planned this, Olivia said quietly. All of it. Emily nodded. You taught me well. It's not personal, it's business, remember. Outside the cathedral, as media crews descended and guests fled the scandal, Emily found Victor waiting. Was it worth it, he asked, watching the Carter family's public implosion. Emily considered the question. Not revenge, she said finally. Justice. There's a difference. Over the following weeks, the Carter Thompson financial scandal dominated headlines. Richard Carter, Ryan Thompson, and several board members faced multiple federal charges. The evidence was overwhelming, thanks to the meticulous documentation Emily and Victor had gathered. Carter Financial stock plummeted, But thanks to Emily's careful planning, she was able to use her 15% ownership and Alexandra Winter's strategic investments to prevent complete collapse. With Richard removed by the board and Ryan facing his own legal troubles, a leadership vacuum existed. 3 months after the wedding day arrests, Emily walked into Carter Financial headquarters openly for the first time since her exile. The board had reluctantly agreed to an emergency meeting at her request, desperate for stability, as the company teetered on the edge of ruin. In the same boardroom where her father had once threatened to destroy her, Emily now presented a comprehensive restructuring plan, with herself as interim CEO and Victor as COO. "You're the reason we are in this mess," one board member objected. "No," Emily countered calmly. "My father's crimes are the reason you're in this mess. I'm the reason those crimes came to light. And now I'm offering you a path forward with the only Carter who still has credibility in the financial world." After hours of tense negotiation, the board capitulated, recognizing that Emily's plan represented their best hope for survival. As she left the building that day with a signed agreement, Emily encountered her mother waiting by the elevator. Catherine Carter looked older, the scandal having taken its toll. "Was destroying your family worth it?" she asked, echoing Victor's question from months before. Emily looked at her mother steadily. "This family destroyed itself, Mom. I just made sure everyone paid the appropriate price." "And now?" Catherine asked. "Richard will likely go to prison. Olivia's marriage is over before it began. The Carter name is toxic. What exactly have you won?" "Not victory," Emily replied. "Restoration. The company will survive, reformed and ethical. The employees who did nothing wrong will keep their jobs. And the Carter name will mean something honest again, eventually." Her mother studied her with new eyes. "You always were your grandmother's granddaughter more than you were Richard's daughter. She would have approved of your backbone, if not your methods." It wasn't forgiveness that might never come, but it was a recognition that carried its own weight. 1 year later, Emily stood at the window of the CEO office at the newly renamed Carter Financial Integrity Group. The company had weathered the storm, emerging smaller but stronger, with transparent practices and ethical leadership at its core. Richard Carter was serving a 10-year sentence for financial crimes. Ryan Thompson had taken a plea deal and received 5 years. Olivia had disappeared to Europe, reportedly working on a memoir. Victor knocked at her open door. "The quarterly reports are ready for review. We are showing modest growth, and client confidence is returning." Emily smiled at him. "My grandmother used to say that a Carter always pays their debts. I think she'd be proud to see us finally living up to that." As she looked out at the Boston skyline, Emily reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had lost a family built on lies, but gained something more valuable, a purpose built on truth, and the knowledge that sometimes justice and karma worked hand in hand. And that, she decided, was the sweetest revenge of all. Wow, what an incredible journey we've been on together through Emily's story of betrayal, resilience, and ultimate triumph. If this tale of family karma resonated with you, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal? What would you have done in Emily's situation? Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this story of sweet justice, and subscribe to my channel for more dramatic true stories that explore the complexities of family, loyalty, and revenge. Share this video with someone who appreciates a good redemption arc. Thank you so much for watching my family revenge story, and remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying others, but rebuilding yourself stronger than before. See you in the next video.